Next, we talk with Bill Olson with the Associated Beer Distributors of Illinois about a problem that arose when a major beer manufacturer wanted to distribute their own beer, which goes against current Illinois law. We'll also discuss proactive steps being taken by the association to prevent underage drinking. This runs about 20 minutes.
Bill Olson, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel.
Terry, I really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you and talk about our industry.
You know, one of the, as you recall, we did a story on the beer distribution system several years ago, kind of explain how it works. And the key element, I would say, for people who don't recall the story was that there's a three-tier system, and that means that we break up the responsibilities of getting a beer into the hands of the consumer. We have those who make it, we have your members who distribute it, and then we have outlets that sell it, whether it's a bar or a convenience store or whatever it might be. So that's the basic elements of the three-tier system. Recently there's been some legislation moving through the legislature over some controversy that came up, as I understand it, relative to Anheuser-Busch InBev, that they were seeking to change the way the system operated, and they wanted to be both the makers, as everyone knows they are, of a beer product, but also wanted to be distributing their own product, which was in violation of existing Illinois law. Where does that issue stand now? And just tell us some of the background as we need to know it.
Well, quickly, the background was that the Liquor Control Commission at one point in time made a ruling and let Anheuser-Busch hold a minority interest, a 30% interest, in a major holding company in the city of Chicago in that market area called City Beverage. And the Liquor Control Commission let them maintain that interest, and at one point AB said, we want to own the whole thing. We applied and went to the Liquor Control Commission and said, we want to buy the whole operation. The Liquor Control Commission said, no, you're ineligible to own a distributorship, and sort of just let it go at that. Anheuser-Busch sued. They said they were being discriminated against because they're an out-of-state brewer and two small in-state brewers have been allowed to self-distribute. Okay? They won the suit. But the judge ruled that the way to eliminate the discrimination was not to allow Anheuser-Busch to own distributorships, but rather take the two licenses away from the small brewers and level the playing field in that manner. And in so doing, he made an important comment. He made several, but one was he recommended that solution because it had the least negative impact on the regulatory system of alcohol in the state of Illinois. So he did go on to say, though, that I am only limited to that option, all or none. And unfortunately, the two small brewers then were going to lose their self-distribution rights.
And
so,
these are microbreweries.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, name them if you don't want, but what was the purpose of them wanting to distribute their own product?
They were just starting out. One of them in Southern Illinois, in Carbondale, Big Muddy Brewing, at the time this was going through, was only making 500 barrels of beer, which is a very little amount of beer.
So they were, I mean, as compared to Anheuser-Busch, they were basically going out and maybe dropping their product off to local restaurants or just,
Right.
It wasn't a major distribution network because they didn't have enough product to distribute.
But the license they had was a regular distribution license, and Anheuser-Busch said, you can't discriminate against us.
No equal protection under the law. If they can do it, we should be able to.
But the judge said, I recommend that this issue be addressed by the General Assembly because they are the quintessential, I remember that word, decider of public policy. So that's what happened. Legislation was introduced in the General Assembly, and it allowed for a small exemption, small brewer exception called craft brewers, allowing those craft brewers to self-distribute half of their beer, and at the same time remove the discrimination provision in the Illinois law so that both there was no conflict between Illinois law and what Anheuser-Busch was allowed to do. I bring all that up because one of the things that we wanted to do was not hurt the craft brewing industry. We have been big supporters of the craft brewing industry. We want to and do distribute a lot of their products. But a craft brewer, just like Anheuser-Busch, has got the same responsibilities as any brewer, and that is make a good beer, market it and create a consumer awareness of it, and develop a consumer following. Okay? Now at that point, they have probably grown out of the self-distribution, drive it around in a pickup mode, and are looking for a distributor, and they have proven themselves as a good brewer.
Right.
And we are happy to take those people on and help them get a broader distribution for their products than they could on their own. But it was put in there as an exception only for the purpose of a brewer starting out to get out in the marketplace and prove itself.
And that's in the bill now going through the legislature?
No, that's in the one that passed.
Okay.
Okay? So where I'm going back here, so that
basically it's in your-
legislation was introduced in 2011. It did what the judge said. It removed the discrimination so that Anheuser-Busch did not qualify for a distributorship license, and it made an exception for the little brewers to allow them to self-distribute. Okay? We thought it was a done deal and everything was set. Liquor Control Commission, the legislation was addressed by the Liquor Control Commission at the request of Anheuser-Busch, InBev, and after a 17-month period, out of the blue, because there was a change in direction, they ruled that Anheuser-Busch could continue to hold its 30% interest in City Bev. We found something very interesting, Terry, at that point in time. In Illinois, under the regulatory process, the administrative rules, the only parties that can appeal or reconsider an action are the two parties that are involved in the regulatory action. In this case, Anheuser-Busch had told the regulators, we won't sue or cause any more problems if you give us 30%, let us keep our 30% interest. The Liquor Control Commission, which we feel without authority to do so, granted them that ability to continue to own the 30%. But as an industry, we could not do anything about it because we were not a party. We could not go to the court. Our hands were tied. The only thing that was left to do was to go back into the General Assembly and once again pass a law that did what we thought the law did in 2011. And that's where we are now. We found out we had a situation where Anheuser-Busch, not to put words in their mouth, but came to the conclusion that their better course of action was to just say, okay, we will divest ourselves of this ownership interest. Whether it's too costly or they didn't want to fight it in court or they knew that we could pass legislation that would eliminate even their 30% interest or whatever, but they said we just need time. And originally they were telling legislators we need a year to find a buyer and get it done with. So we put in legislation that actually gave them 2 years, okay, because we wanted to take that argument away from them. But it still meant that they could now no longer have an interest in a distributorship. Eventually it went through a process under the guidance and direction of President Cullerton in the Senate, who said, you guys aren't that far apart. One side wants you out of the distribution business. The other side has said, we'll get out of the distribution business, we just need time to do so, and a procedure under which to do it, so we know we're doing it legally. So that's what the legislation that is moving has developed into. A prohibition on future of any brewer owning a distributorship, but giving any brewer that happened at this time to own a part of a distributorship a period of time to January 1st, 2015 to divest itself of that interest. So it has passed the House and it is now going before the Senate, and right at the moment, there is no real opposition to it because
Neither side is really contesting the
it
issue.
is contesting the issue.
Yeah.
It passed the House 103 to nothing.
Let me ask, for those who, haven't followed the beer distribution network and how it works, what would be wrong with having a brewer distribute their own product? Why do we need independent
Great question,
distributors?
because people sometimes aren't aware of what beer distributors do, okay? We are part of the regulatory process, but in just the area that you're talking is that a brewer that owns a distributorship has no incentive to take on other brands. Their only brands they're going to sell are their brands. And in a lot of the market in Illinois, their distribution is about 50% of the market.
Anheuser-Busch.
Anheuser-Busch's is.
So they would say, well, we're not going to carry Heineken beer because we're AmBev, we're just going to carry our own brands.
Right. And more importantly, that's the importance of an independent distributor. An independent distributor wants to do one thing: take on any brand that it can make money on by distributing it. So independent distributors allow craft brewers to have access to market, allow new regional brands that are being introduced into the state to have a means to get to market. New import brands that come into the country, it's a means to get to market. So the independent wholesaler, rather than a brewery-owned distributor, provides market access to all those people, which provides a tremendous benefit to the people of the state of Illinois on a variety of choice that they have. And one of the comments I have heard, not just in beer, but in alcoholic beverages, because of independent distributors, Americans have the greatest choice of alcoholic beverages of any place in the world. And all you got to do is walk through, the liquor department of your grocery store, and all you see are varieties of products.
Right, you might see 30 different brands just in the grocery store.
Right, but if you had a brewery-owned distributorship, and let's say there are two major brewers, which there are, Anheuser-Busch InBev and Miller Coors, which have almost 80+% of the market, that wouldn't look that way. It would look like the soft drink section. It would look like all the Coke people and the Pepsi products and a few other people. So variety is achieved best through independent distributors, and it helps businesses starting out, expanding, craft brewers getting into the market. So there's an economic impact that an independent distributor also provides.
One of the other things we're going to be having coming up at the end of the school year here, graduation and proms and all that, and drinking has historically been an issue with high school kids. I know it was when I was in high school. What are the beer distributors? I think you're doing something to try to educate, the work with the schools to fight that as an issue or to raise awareness?
Basically, for over 10 years, we've had two programs going. The first one is called Talking to Teens, and it's a brochure, it's a flyer that is intended for parents to use in talking to their kids about alcohol use and to encourage them and give them reasons not to drink alcohol before the legal drinking age. We distribute that through high schools and middle schools, and we partner with the Illinois Principals Association originally on developing this, and we also partner now with the Illinois High School Association, which has expanded the number of schools, teachers, coaches that we make this available to. It's been very well received. We've distributed hundreds of thousands of these things at no charge. We just send out information to people it's available, and they send in an order, and we'll send we limit the amount, but that we are going to send, because we don't want it to get too costly or too much of a benefit for one school. We want to have it spread around. The other program we use is during prom time, and it's called Straight Talk About Underage Drinking, and it's just a flyer. It's a two-sided flyer, but it's aimed at the student, and it does some things addressing them, first of all, why you should not consume alcohol, but it also gives tips on practical aspects of, like, how do you recognize that your friend has consumed too much alcohol, and if so, what do you do about it? How do you handle that? So it's very practical, down to earth, and sends the message, don't drink, but also is put in a vein that, hey, we aren't going to just lecture you. We're going to help you know what to do when you run into a situation where alcohol has been misused or abused. And that, too, has been very widely spread, distributed, and accepted.
Yeah, we've all heard the tragedies of a carload of teenagers hitting a tree, or on the other hand, maybe having a friend pass out in a bed in a room, and they let that person alone, and they perhaps die of alcohol poisoning when they should have gone to a hospital. So it's obviously an issue that you can never know too much on that kind of an issue.
And we are strong believers that our product is an adult product, and adult, in this case, means someone over 21 years old. And there's plenty of people out there in that market for us to service.
Right.
And we target everything towards those people, and through a code of ethics, try not to, this is more at the brewery level, do any type of advertising that would imply that people are consuming it at an age under 21. So.
Well, and on that three-tier system that we alluded to in the very beginning, the third point is that not only is it distributed through retail outlets, whether a restaurant or a convenience store or whatever, but obviously that's where the regulatory aspect of controlling the sale of the product to those by people carding and making sure, whether at a bar or a convenience store, that the people consuming it are of age.
The Liquor Control Act, with an emphasis on the word control, when it was passed in 1934, was passed for the purpose of protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the people of the state of Illinois. And that is still its purpose, and it's controlling alcohol from the time it is produced to the time it is sold to a legal purchaser. And we're part of that system in the middle as a distributor that assures that all product is controlled that comes into the state and reported to the state. And then when it is sold to a retailer, it is reported to the state where all that alcohol beverages went to, so they can track it. It's a chain of custody, like I said, where we have knowledge, and the state of Illinois has knowledge of where all that alcohol is. It helps taxation, it helps controlling it where it's sold, because we only sell to licensed retailers. And the state of Illinois then benefits from us collecting taxes on all of that product and remitting it to the state electronically, and they have very little costs in generating over $64 million of revenue from taxing beer that we, as a distributor, remit to the state on a monthly basis.
Okay. Well, Bill Olson, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Well, thank you. There's a lot more to talk about, because we could always talk about what we do to help consumers have better products and availability on the shelves, which is an important thing that we do. We care about freshness of product. We want the consumer to have available to them the best possible beer. Nothing better than a cold beer. And we want to make sure that they have it when they want it, and it's the way it should be.
All right. Thanks again.
Take care.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.